Hello students, in previous part we have understood about the sympathetic nervous system. Now in this part we are going to discuss about the parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system also has the same basic structure as the sympathetic nervous system, that is the preganglionic nerve fibers, the ganglion and the postganglionic nerve fibers. Now the preganglionic nerve fibers which arise in the parasympathetic nervous system, they arise from the brainstem and the sacral region of the spinal cord. Now these preganglionic nerve fibers, they arise from the cranial nerves. Cranial nerves, now which cranial nerves do these fibers arise from? That is the 3rd, 7th, 9th and the 10th cranial nerve. Now to understand this, we will refer this diagram. Suppose this is the midbrain, the upper part is the midbrain, below that is the medulla part, medulla oblongata. This is the cervical region, this is the thoracic region, this is the lumbar region and this is the sacral region. Now here, as we have, as I said, that the preganglionic nerve fibers, they arise from the cranial nerves. Now from this, and also they arise from the brain stem. So from this brain part, that brain stem, that is midbrain and medulla part, the cranial nerves, they arise, and from these cranial nerves, the preganglionic nerve fibers, they arise. So the 3rd cranial nerve, the 7th cranial nerve, the 9th and the 10th cranial nerve. Now while understanding the cranial nerves, we have learned that a formula to remember the names of the cranial nerves. So O cube T square AFA GVSH. This formula we have learned just to remember the names of the cranial nerves. Now we said that there are 3 cranial nerves whose names start from O. Now first one was olfactory, second one was optic, and the third one, the 3rd cranial nerve, that is the oculomotor. So here the 3rd nerve which arises, that is the oculomotor nerve. The preganglionic nerve fiber arises from the 3rd cranial nerve. Then the 7th nerve, that is facial nerve. 9th one is glossopharyngeal nerve and 10th one is vagus nerve. So the nerve which, the preganglionic nerve fibers which arise from the brain stem, they arise from the cranial nerves, that is 3rd cranial nerve, oculomotor nerve, 7th cranial nerve, that is facial nerve, 9th one is glossopharyngeal nerve and the 10th one is vagus nerve. They arise from the cranial nerves. Now these preganglionic nerve fibers, in the case of parasympathetic system, parasympathetic nervous system, these preganglionic nerve fibers, preganglionic nerve fibers are longer than the postganglionic nerve fibers. In case of sympathetic system, we saw the preganglionic nerve fibers were short and the postganglionic nerve fibers which come after the ganglion, they were long. And in case of sympathetic system, this preganglionic nerve fibers, they were closer to the spinal cord. Here the preganglionic nerve fibers, they are long and the ganglions, they connect the ganglions, and after that the postganglionic nerve fibers which arise, they are short, and these postganglionic nerve fibers, they enter inside the muscles of the organs. Suppose this is the organ, they enter in the muscles or they enter in the organ, and after that they get branched. So here inside the organ or inside the organ muscles, then they get branched. In case of sympathetic system, we saw before reaching the organ, those postganglionic nerves, they branched. Here after reaching the organ, afterwards these postganglionic nerve fibers, they get branched inside the muscles of the organ or inside the organ itself. So here in case of parasympathetic nervous system, the preganglionic nerve fibers are longer than the postganglionic nerve fibers. Now these postganglionic nerve fibers, they have limited effect because they are short and they branched inside the organ or inside the organ muscles, whereas in sympathetic nervous system they branched before reaching the organ, so they have a widespread effect. They spread widely and they have a widespread effect. Here the postganglionic nerve fibers are short and they branch afterwards after reaching the organ muscles or the organ. That's why the effect which is caused, that is limited effect. And these postganglionic nerve fibers, while having a synapse with the organs, what neurotransmitter do they secrete? They secrete acetylcholine as their neurotransmitter, and that's why these postganglionic nerve fibers are called as cholinergic nerve fibers. Whereas we saw in the sympathetic nervous system, the neurotransmitter was adrenaline, and that's why those postganglionic nerve fibers were called as adrenergic nerve fibers. Here the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine and these postganglionic nerve fibers are called as cholinergic nerve fibers. Now, in the same way, the nerve fibers, preganglionic nerve fibers, they arise from the brainstem and also they arise from the sacral region. Now here, from the sacral region, from the second, third and fourth sacral nerve, these preganglionic nerve fibers, they arise and they connect to the ganglion. These preganglionic nerve fibers are longer than the postganglionic nerve fibers, and hereafter they get branched. So these nerve fibers, preganglionic nerve fibers, they arise from the brainstem, from the cranial nerves and from the sacral nerves. That's why the outflow of these nerve fibers is called as craniosacral outflow, whereas in sympathetic nervous system most of the nerve fibers, they arise from thoracic region and the lumbar region. That's why the outflow is called as thoracico-lumbar in case of sympathetic nervous system. In case of parasympathetic nervous system, the nerve fibers, they arise from the brainstem, from the cranial nerves, and here from the sacral nerves, and that's why the outflow of the nerves is called as the craniosacral outflow. And these postganglionic nerve fibers, they end up in the same organs which in which the sympathetic postganglionic nerve fibers, they ended up. So in for example, salivary glands, tear glands, heart, stomach, intestines, kidneys, etc. In the same organs, these postganglionic nerve fibers, they reach. Now if we have to dissect to observe these systems, in case of sympathetic nervous system, if we dissect, the physical structure is visible because of the sympathetic cords which form due to the connection of the ganglions, due to the joint ganglions. A sympathetic cord is formed. We saw that after the preganglionic nerve fibers, they connect with the ganglions which are joined together from either sides. So a cord is seen, and that is called a sympathetic cord. A physical structure is seen in case of sympathetic nerve fibers. But here in case of parasympathetic nerve fibers, we have to trace the nerves. If we have to see the structure, we have to trace, if we dissect and we have to trace the nerve, preganglionic nerve, it reaches to the ganglion, and then after postganglionic nerve and to the organ. We have to trace the nerve from where it starts to where it reaches. Here also we have to trace the sacral nerve from where it starts and to the ganglion, and after the postganglionic nerve fiber to the organ. So in case of parasympathetic nervous system, no such physical structure is available or can be seen. We have to trace the nerves to find out which organ they reach. But in case of sympathetic nervous system, two sympathetic cords are seen on the either side of the spinal cord. So that's why physical structure is visible. In case of parasympathetic system, no such physical structure is available or seen. So here in case of parasympathetic nervous system, the nerve fibers, they arise from the brainstem and the sacral region. Preganglionic nerve fibers, they arise from the cranial nerves, that is the 3rd, 7th, 9th and 10th cranial nerve from the brainstem, and 2nd, 3rd and 4th sacral nerve from the sacral region. That is why the outflow of the nerves is called as craniosacral outflow. And these preganglionic nerve fibers in case of parasympathetic nervous system are longer than the postganglionic nerve fibers. Postganglionic nerve fibers are short and they reach to the organ or organ muscles and then they get branched. And postganglionic, that's why postganglionic nerve fibers, they have a very limited effect. And the neurotransmitter which is secreted while the synapse is the acetylcholine, and that's why these postganglionic nerve fibers are called as cholinergic nerve fibers, and they end up in the same organs as in the sympathetic nervous system, that is salivary glands, tear glands, heart, trachea, stomach, intestine, kidney, etc. So all those organs, they are connected to all these organs, the postganglionic nerve fibers, in both the cases, in the sympathetic nervous system as well as in the parasympathetic.